Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Sundays Community Conversations. My name's Miss J, and I'm here on Love Bay Afrobeat Music Talk Radio each and every Sunday at 5 o'clock p.m. to discuss things that have impact locally and globally. We talk about things that are hot, what's not, but everything matters. So I am excited today to really continue exploring because, as I said a few shows ago, I'm not a pop up. I like to make sure that we're getting 100% of the things that you need information on. And today we're going to explore a little bit about the landscape of employment. And so I'm excited to have this conversation with you. As always, please feel free to hit the comments up if you have questions. Send us information or questions, even in between, if you have, to infolovebay@gmail.com. So we are looking at the importance that employment plays in our life. And for the past 2 weeks, we talked about, what are some of the stats that we're seeing. We also had a guest on who was talking about how to become employable, whether it's or being an entrepreneur, whichever works for you. It's about really identifying who you are and what you want to do. Now, today, I want to talk a little bit about what is the landscape of employment that sometimes our community, our Black communities, are overlooking. We're overlooking some of the things that we can possibly be doing to get into it. Now, if you, at any age, I always say you can always learn, you can always grow. And so you want to make sure that you're taking advantage of the things that are being provided today and maybe looking at something that you typically wouldn't have gone into. And we're going to talk about why. Let's get into this. Let's dive into this. If you're here, make sure that you're tuning in with us because we always try to bring on a guest or a feature, someone who's going to bring us some excellent information. And sometimes it's just me. Why? Because at the end of the day, I'm always looking at how can I provide resources. So I'm just pulling my notes up here. We have a few good pieces that I think are going to be super beneficial. And if you haven't thought about these employment areas, I'm going to urge you to think about it. We need to expose ourselves to a lot of things. We see things that are coming into the industry. AI is in the industry, but there's some employment industries, and I did my research on this because I don't like to come without having some facts. And one of the facts that I went and researched was, what are employment areas that have the lowest amount of Black people who enter into these industries? Now, I thought this was pretty cool because at the end of the day, we know, for example, nursing is a top one. We have anything social. We're very good at grassroots. We're very good at not-for-profit organizations. We're good in the health industry. However, more from a nursing perspective than, doctors. And we see that numbers changing, and more people are attacking the health industry and trying to help people from a different vantage point. But here are some of the top ones that we're not in. Okay, so here are the top ones. So first one is tech and IT. Historically, it's been found that tech industry has lacked diversity, partly due to access barriers in education and networking opportunities. So are you thinking about becoming IT? Well, I'm going to give you some ideas of how you can be part of the field, because sometimes we hear about these fields, but we don't necessarily know how to jump into them. So we're going to talk about that. Well, what are the benefits of being part of tech and IT? Well, some benefits are the high demand for tech skills that leads to competitive salaries. So people are getting paid some really good money to get into information and technology. There's also opportunities for innovation and impact in a growing industry. AI is going nowhere. It is here to stay. And so here's a beautiful example of how you can jump in and get into that. Then there's opportunities for innovation and impact in a growing industry. Oh, sorry, I just said that one. Let me go back to the third one. Programs and initiatives are increasingly focused on improving diversity in tech. So as you can see, colleges and universities, they are shifting to some more high tech ends, removing some of those programs that are no longer really employable. And that's the goal of any school. If you're thinking about your kids, are you exposing them to these types of technological or IT environments? You'd be surprised, especially kids who love to play video games and whatnot. Sometimes we look on it and we're saying, put down those games and go do your homework. But some, like me, I encourage them to play it. Why? Because if they can get into coding, they could get into design, they could get into arts, they can get into any part of that gaming industry, that is a multi-billion-dollar industry. And so whether they're going to go from an employment lens or an entrepreneur lens, you want to give them the ability. You're seeing the interest. How can you nurture it? Now, there's some common roles in tech and IT that you can look into, and that could be software development or becoming an engineer, right? The education you need is a bachelor's degree in computer science or some related field. And they even have boot camps that you can go to and get some real ground level information about it. Now, some of the things that you could also do in tech is become a data scientist or an analyst. Okay, so most of these typically require a bachelor's degree in math or computer science. But if you have a little inkling for these things, and you love numbers and you love, looking at, you can fix your computer or your laptop, think about it. These are very high employable areas with very low barriers to get in. Okay, you can be a network administrator. That's a person who really sits down and understands how to use protocols and architecture experience and configurations and management. So if you're a person who likes those types of things, hey, think about using those skills and transferring it to the IT field. Remember, we're here to talk about all the things that you can do to either reduce unemployment or being underemployed, or to look for gainful employment. So part of that is understanding where employment is and where employment is going, okay? Also in the IT field, you could do cybersecurity. Are you a PI? Do you like to get into things? Right? This really talks about risk assessment or familiarity with security tools and skills that respond to incidences or prevention. So if you're a person who is pretty good at coming up with ideas on how you can secure something, then this might be something you want to look into. Sometimes your daily habits or just your interests can really help you to decide how to get into an employment field. Sometimes we think about what do we enjoy doing, but really what we want to ask ourselves is what skills do we have? When we were talking with Mr. Kadasti, Ross Kadasti last week, he really spoke about that when he said, we have to start looking at our resumes and ensuring that we have the skills for someone to hire us. It's not enough just to want the job. We have to have the ability to perform the job. And him being a talent agent, he understands that he cannot sell or he cannot promote or he cannot refer or he cannot network somebody who doesn't have the qualifications to do the job. And so sometimes it's looking beyond what's there and saying to yourself, how can I use these skills in a different way? I mean, especially if you're going to go to a job and, particularly not enjoy it, do one that pays. Right? Do one that pays. Why not? All right? Why not? Okay, last one in the IT sector that I found pretty interesting was web developer. Yes, so if you understand anything in HTML, CSS, JavaScript, or any of the responsive design principles, this is a possible thing. And you can get, again, another bachelor's degree or computer science or even some self-taught. Sometimes experience trumps education, right? So all depending on where you're going to apply for and what the position you're applying for, you could be utilizing your self-taught skills. Some people have been doing this stuff for years, I mean, decades, and they don't have any actual certifications behind it. And they still get amazing jobs. And for the most part, employers are looking for people who have the ability to do that. Okay, so take a look at that. Now, here's the second area. Okay, if you're just joining, let me do a quick pause, a little bit of check-in, my people. I hope for wherever you are just logging in from. My name's Miss J. I'm the host of Community Conversations right here on Afrobeat. Love Bay Afrobeat Music Talk Radio. Each and every Sunday, we are looking to help make change by having the conversations. And I vowed at the very first, and I will maintain this, that when I start talking about something, I want to be thorough. I want to give you all the information so that you can impact change. And sometimes what we know is easier to apply than what we don't know. So today I'm talking about exploring the employment landscapes. And particularly, I'm really zoning in on the areas where the world is going, and we need to get on there. And we need to start looking at, can our skills and our passions and our abilities and our capacity have the ability to go to these types of fields and maximize on it? Why? Because employment's not just about making money to pay your bills. It's about enjoying what you're doing and applying yourself to build up your own self-worth. And the more experience that you have and the more exposure you have to different things, you can become quite a viable contender when it comes to applying for jobs that you actually want to do. So we were just talking about the IT and tech world and some of the things that you can do in it. Because I know we hear IT and we hear tech, we hear AI, we hear all of this jargon, but sometimes it's just understanding what's within it and how you can actually get into it. You can do a Google search or just email, and I will send you this information. Email us at infolovebay@gmail.com, and I will definitely share some of these amazing resource information that I've gotten. Now let's talk a little bit about money. Okay, so we talk about money, and I'm not talking about financial literacy or credit card debt and stuff. That's a whole other show. But today I'm actually talking about finance and investment banking. That is a massive industry that will never go anywhere, period. Never, right? So that is definitely one of the areas. Now, the rationale why a lot of Black people don't enter it are systemic barriers, such as recruiting practices and workplace culture, who have historically excluded Black candidates. We can see this is starting to change. I was privileged enough to attend with Love Bay to the Afro Global Awards last night, and it was amazing to see so much excellence in one room gracing the stage. There was such a wide range of people. I can't wait to have them here on Community Conversation for them to impact you and inspire you to reach out and do the things that they've achieved. And this is, I mean, they've been in these fields for some 9, 10, 15, 20 years. And that just goes to show that they're trailblazing the path to exploring the landscape. They explored the landscape. They took their skill sets, they applied themselves, they got the education and the experience, and now they are making things happen, and they were being recognized for that. And so kudos to the Afro Global community for continuously perpetrating the positivity of what we are capable of doing. And finance and investment banking is nothing less. When we think about that, the benefits of being in it in finance and banking is definitely a high earnings and career advancement. It moves very quickly, all right? You could be working from different forms, whether you're working in a bank or you're working in an investment company or in a mortgage company or whatever the case is. Finance is really big. So it can be from something as simple as accounting to something as complex as investment banking. Now, I shouldn't say that. Accounting is not as simple as it looks. I've tried it, not my bag, and I just have a great accountants in my life. But the other benefits of it are the finance sector offers a significant influence over economic politics and policies and practices. So when you're thinking about, I'm studying for my securities license right now, and you know what I'm learning? A hell of a lot. Okay. I decided that I was going to get into finance because I am a business strategist and I help people to develop their business or build their blueprint so that they can launch a successful endeavor. Now, a big part of that is finance. We talk a lot about financial planning in business development because why? When you're building something, you have to invest capital, you have to inject. And when I started thinking about all of these visionaries who wanted to build something, one of my biggest things was, well, what is their level of financial planning literacy? And getting down into the business plan, I started to see that it wasn't that high. And that's dangerous. And so I decided to get my insurance so I can help them get business insurance, life insurance, any other insurances, health benefits, etc. Because again, when you're when you're building your own thing, eventually you're going to need to have to put liabilities on it. You're going to have to put insurance on it. If you're looking to do this and hire and employ people, you have to become an attractive employer. So that's going to introduce things like benefits and group insurance and all these pieces. And I thought to myself, bringing added value to someone is bringing them not only the knowledge, but the actual resources. And so I took the steps to do that. And guess what? By doing that, it opened my eyes to things that we need to learn more about in finance. Right? It's great to say I have a budget and I run a business or whatever the case is, but are you truly understanding how your money works for you and how it works in the global economy or the scale of things? And so getting into finance and investment banking is one of those ways. But it also helps to grow that diversity in finance and provide new pathways. There's so much amazing people that are helping money to make money while people are sleeping. Why not be part of that, right? So if you are interested in the finance industry, start to look at what are some of the things you can do. Again, I'm not going to sit here and give every single piece because that could take us more than an hour, but I want you to get into it in terms of asking yourself. But I'm going to definitely talk about this next one that is massive in the field, and that's construction and skilled trades. Now, that's still low for the Black communities. There's a stereotype that seems to be happening regarding manual labor jobs, coupled with a lack of awareness of apprenticeships and programs. And in my career working, I had a lot of opportunities to work with the trades when I was transitioning buildings, or if I was in my project management component. I had the ability to work with, facilities and work with landscape and work with, other areas. And one of the things that I asked them was, why is it that not just Black people, but in general, why are the trades suffering? And a lot of it is because of the stereotype of the manual labor. And they think that people who work construction or in construction or any of the skilled trades are not compensated as well as somebody who works in a bank or who works in an office on Bay Street or who works, in some administrative faction. And that can be less, that could be so far from the truth. There is so much money to be made in the skilled trades and in construction, whether you're going to work within it or whether you're going to own it. There's so much opportunity for that, right? There is a high demand. Like, what country is not developing? I mean, if you live in Toronto or Canada, okay, I want to say Toronto for the most part, but if you live here, you know there's always construction. Every major city in Ontario is pretty much under construction half the time, right? New roads, new sidewalks, new look, new landscape. So if you just drive through, instead of being frustrated about the traffic in your area, take a look at what they're building, right? New development homes are going up like crazy. Do you know how many positions and skilled trades are used in putting your home up? If you're living in an apartment, you're living in a condo, you're living in a townhouse, semi or single, sweetie, there is a lot of people working on that house, right? I mean, I've bought my third house that I've bought, or second house that I think I bought from the ground up. And my husband, bless his heart, he comes to the construction site, and he kind of oversees. He wants to make sure he knows where every nail is put. And I followed him a few times, and I have to rate him because at the end of the day, I wouldn't even have the patience. I just want the key, and I just want to walk in, and I just want to look cute, right? But the reality is there's a lot of people who come in, right? You have the people who have to lay, just the concrete, and then the people who have to put in the wiring, and then the plumbing, the electricity. There's just so much, and they're making really good money, right? So what are some other benefits? Well, it benefits you from you're contributing to infrastructure, right? At the end of the day, these skilled trades are what build cities. The roads you drive on wasn't built by somebody who was investing in high-end stock or an index fund, right? The lights that you stop and go at that control our traffic and save our lives, that's a skilled trade, right? When you open the door to go into the grocery store, that's a skilled trade, right? When you look at big layouts and you go to amusement parks and whatnot, those are skilled trades. So as you can see, if there's something that you are going to, you're staying in, or you're walking into, it really boils down to somebody who took the time to put it together for you to walk into it. So you're going to ask me, Miss J, what are some of those positions? Because I'm super excited. And if you're not, get excited. All right. There is the electrician. Okay. So this typically requires just a high school diploma or equivalent. Hear what I'm saying now? If you're a person who says, Miss J, I ain't fitting to go to school for the next 10 years of my life, then skilled trades is still the way to go and still a way to make that money, okay? Many electricians complete a formal apprenticeship program, which can last maybe 4 to 5 years, but it includes classroom instruction and hands-on training. So if you're a person who likes to work with your hands and you don't like sitting at a desk, skill trades is your best friend. And I know quite a few people who do skill trades who are making some really good incomes and revenues either in business or as a career. Now, in electricity, being an electrician, you can also it's apprenticeship is a necessary. It's essential, right? And then you can proceed to get your license based on whatever requirements that the province or state may have, depending on where you live. Check out what are the requirements to become an electrician. Let me tell you, you wouldn't see me right now if the light in my office wasn't on, all right, or the light in my studio wasn't on. Why? And somebody had to put it in there and somebody had to plug it together so that I could just go to a switch and go bloop. Think about it, right? Okay, next one that is big money, plumbing. Okay, again, high school diploma is usually required along with plumbing apprenticeships, right? So again, most of these are 4 to 5 years in length. Most of it's hands-on training, which for many people, if you're very kinesthetic and you like to use your hands, then you can gain your experience through apprenticeship. Carpentry. What's the education of? Again, high school diploma or GED. You can always take on vocational training. You can attend trade schools. But most people enter this field through apprenticeship, okay? So this is about a 3 to 4 year pull in order to learn it. And then you can jump into the licensing component of it, all right? Being a mason. Have you ever heard of that one? All right, being a mason. You don't even need any high schools. Most of these have high school diploma or just complete vocational training. Again, all of these are apprenticeship type. HVAC technician, which stands for heating, ventilation, and air conditioning. I'm just going to give you a moment to take that in. Who here doesn't use heat? Who here doesn't use air AC? I'm just going to put that out there. We all do, right? So that is definitely a skill. It comes with completing technical school programs or apprenticeship, which can last 2 to 5 years. Now, you can't say I'm not giving you some tea here, honey. I'm giving you the meats and the potatoes. Okay, I'm giving you the Sunday dinner. I'm giving you things that you can put in. I just want to throw things out there. Sometimes you just got to throw things out there and let's see where it lands. That's kind of where I'm at, or how I like to coach and how I like to talk and how I like to pursue things. We always have to be looking at what's next. Okay, so we talked about 3 key things so far. If you're joining us, welcome here to Community Conversations with Miss J, your hostess with the mostest. Each week we talk about something that's impacting our communities. For the past few weeks, I've been talking about employment, and I'm a person who's very thorough to the cause. As I said before, I'm going to bring you the tea, honey. It's for you to just sip on it, okay? As always, jump in the comments if you have a question. My producers will let me know, and if I can answer it, I will. If I can't, I won't fraud you, honey. I'll tell you that's outside of my thing, but I will definitely find the answer and send it to you. So we were talking today about what are some areas of employment that Black people typically don't access. And so the first 3 that we talked about was information and IT. Okay, we talked about that. We talked about finance and investment banking. So if you have a little green thumb here with the money, this might be something that you want to get into. If you're analytical and you like to, secure things, IT is the way to go. We just finished talking about construction and skilled trades, right? So that is something that you definitely can look into. There's a lot of different positions within it. The next one that I want to bring that we are not typically always doing is advanced academia. So this is tenured professorships. I can barely say it myself. Tenured professorships, right? There's an unrepresentation in academia that can deter applications, such as influenced by fewer role models and access to mentorship. So why a lot of Black people are not doing it is because there are not enough people out there that they see are doing it to see it's possible. I'm reading Becoming by Michelle Obama with my growth mindset coaching group. And one of the things that I love about reading about women of color, especially, is not just hearing their story, but how did they trailblaze their way to where they are? And Michelle Obama clearly is part of that faction of women who have made it. I mean, the First Lady of the United States. I mean, what else can you say to that, right? We have Dr. Jean Augustine. We have so little, but so much powerful women who are out there changing the game in politics. And I'm just going to use that as an example. But if you listen to Michelle's story, she went really into the academia world and, really putting in the work to get where she needed to go. And then she met Barack, and the rest is kind of history. But what I loved about the book was it really showed her stance on politics and her husband's involvement in politics, and the education, how her education really, both of their education really played into where they stood today, because they were able to help their communities through advanced academia, right? Now, the benefits of being in these roles is the ability to shape the future of education and policy. Are you done complaining about what your kids are not getting in school? Well, why don't you get on parent teacher council, right? Why don't you be more active in the school? And if you are, kudos. Tell me what you're doing, share your stories, and why it's important to be front and center. We want to show our children that we are actually serious, not just about complaining about the teachers, but being active in making things happen within it. I've sat very heavily on my parent-teacher councils throughout my kids' school careers. And you know what? As they got older, they understood that they had to advocate for themselves or learn how to advocate for others. Right. And I encourage them, if you're into sciences and math, amazing. Take it all the way through high school, because you want to give yourself opportunities and options. The other piece that I thought was really good, a benefit of being in advanced academia, was the ability to inspire and mentor future generations. If we can get more of our children from away from the toxic environments that are caused typically in low economic communities, and move them a little bit more over to role models, or find the role models and see how can I get my child attached or exposed. One of the things I'm starting to see with parents is that they're doing a lot more exposure to the books, and they're being more cognizant about what their children are watching and things that they can see. Now young children can say, I want to be an actress, or I want to be an actor, or I want to design a kids show, or I want to write a book, or I want to do this. We're seeing more and more. So we're doing better. And we're not just seeing this locally, but we're seeing this globally. There's a lot of change happening in our communities because our next generation, the millennials, are finding ways to tap into these money making. We talk about, like, for example, being a social media influencer, something that, your mom would tell you, come off of the screen and go do your books. But the reality is these people are making millions of dollars upwards to, and shaping how products are being sold across the world. So let's not underestimate where we are in this day and time and what we consider employment. And advanced academia is no different. These positions often come with research funding and resources to explore innovative ideas. So when you see your little one tinkering and toddling around with something, or you see your teen, really invested in something, these are things that are funded at later portions and are given the opportunity to take their ideas and make them come to life. One of the things that my parents always said to me was, whatever we can afford to do, know that you still have the ability to afford to do it. And that meant to me that it wasn't always about having the money, but if I wanted to go to school, I simply just had to go and look at what were the resources. And in Canada, we have what we call I can speak safely for Ontario, we have OSAP, where it's a loan to go to school, and you obviously have to pay it back, but it does give you access, right? And then there's other things that you can tap into: bursaries, grants, scholarships, etc. But the whole point is recognizing that just because your parents didn't do it, or it's not a cycle in your family, doesn't mean that you can't explore it. So you don't have to go into these streamlined employment fields, because not everyone's fit for that. I'm not a hairstylist by any stretch of the imagination. What you see here, or how I show up, is by definitely somebody else's hand, right? But I'm more into social development, but I also love finance. I love, I can't say I'm in love with IT, or technology, but I love what it does for me. So I'm getting into it, honey. I'm getting into it. All right. So I wanted to pause there on the advanced academia, start thinking of how can you shape the life of those around you, the communities you live in, and for yourself. and how you can take it to the next level. There was one, I think it was Dr. Wong. She was a recipient of an award yesterday, and she has like 4 masters. I rate that woman on endlessly because I don't even think I could stay up long enough to get a bachelor's. Right? But there's people who have the brains for that. And let me tell you, those are nice brains. So if you are a person who loves studying and you love to be in this system of learning, maximize on it. Get into professorship, get into tenure, right? And you will see what you can do to take it to the next. Let's talk a little bit about healthcare. So now there's a lot of hands-on, okay? However, there's a little less focus on the clinical roles. The administrative pathways. Okay. And so sometimes you're not really seeing all the things that you can do in healthcare. You don't have to be a nurse, or you don't have to be a doctor, you don't have to be a PSW. You don't have to be those roles if you're a person who's not really inclined to do that, but you do love healthcare. You love researching, you love doing, you can look at all different types of roles that are going to help the industry. So it's almost like if you look at the back end where you don't see all those web developers in IT, right? You see the hospital administrators who are making sure that the bills are paid so that we can get brand new equipment and rooms and lights and the whole nine. There's a lot of roles in the back end that you can do. If you're into the healthcare mode, you can find administrative roles to support that. I said a lot. I did. I said a lot, so I'm going to run it real quick because these are the areas that I want you to focus on, okay? So if you're just joining, welcome, welcome, welcome. If you don't know who I am, I'm Miss J, your host of Community Conversations. And again, we're here to talk about things that are impacting our communities and ways that we can start to make change, because that's what the conversation is really about, how we make change. Now, if you're just tuning in, we were talking about areas that typically Black people do not look for employment. And so I'm going to run it from the top real quick. If you remember it, type it in the chat. We had tech and IT. Okay, so we were looking there. We were looking at common roles like software developers, data scientists or analysts. You could be a network administrator. All right. Then we talked about finance and investment banking. We see there's a rise, but there are some systemic barriers there in workplace cultures and whatnot that are slowly starting to take change, because why? More and more people are getting into the industry and seeing the benefits of advancing their career. We talked about construction and skilled trades. Okay, again, there may be stereotypes regarding manual labor, but those are, hopefully we want to change that. Construction and skilled trades are some of the richest people in the world. You don't hear about them. They're not flashy. They're not artists. They're not sports figures, right? Or but they are making massive amounts of money paving the roads that you drive on, making sure the lights, above our heads are on. And so you want to really look at construction and skilled trades as being a very viable employment area. All right, we talked about different roles in there, such as carpenter, plumber, electrician. We talked about HVAC technicians. Okay, so again, if you are interested in these things, Google it. It's not hard. Google it, find out what do I need to have in order to do what I do. We just finished, we talked about advanced academia, looking at tenured professorship or being in the academia world, and the benefits of that is shaping the education and policy futures. We are talking about being inspirational mentors to future generations. But most importantly, I want to keep reminding you, you're really thinking about setting up the role modeling for our next generation, right? Whether whatever it may be, I want your children and my children to see more and more opportunities. And we're going to take a second to talk about why it's important. And then last, we wrapped up with healthcare administration. So those are 5 areas that have the lowest employment of Black people. We know sometimes it's systemic, but for some people, they're just not, they don't access it, right? You don't hear, well, at least I can speak for myself. I can't say that my grandparents and parents were doctors and lawyers and academias and whatnot. My father is an accountant and he did well, and my mother, well, she in her own right, she did nurse PSW. She was into healthcare, and mostly taking care of her four beautiful children. We weren't mischievous whatsoever. Okay. Now, the benefits that we want to talk about are very key, and I want us to kind of lap into this for the next 10 minutes or so. But we have to have a diverse perspective, right? When we bring different experiences and viewpoints traditionally in homogenous fields, it leads to better problem solving and innovation. Okay, so not only do we need to think differently, but we need to start thinking forward. We need to start looking at the world around us and saying to ourselves, what's out there that I can touch, help, and heal? Okay. And even if you're in any of those major fields that we typically flock to, we want to start looking at how do we nurture those who may have a different perspective and encourage those our whether it's our children, our nieces, nephews, grandkids, or whatever the case is. We want to look very early in life and expose them to these types of things, the diversity of employment, so that they know that they can get, because it's amazing when you come from areas like where I grew up, we didn't have exposure to that. But there was always a nurse in the community. There was always certain people in the community, but there wasn't a lot of people who exposed us to the different types of perspectives that employment could bring. The second part I want to talk about a little bit is career resilience, right? You want to explore, when you're exploring the variety of sectors that I've just spoken about, you can really lead to more of a robust career path, right? It minimizes vulnerability to job market fluctuations. What does that mean, Miss J? Holy, I'll tell you what it means. It means that there are things that are never going to leave. There are things that will come and go, and then there's things that will never leave. The five that I just talked about are things that make up this and shape our world, right? We will always have information IT. We will always have healthcare. We will always have skilled trades and construction. These are things that are guaranteed. So if you are going to invest in a pathway, seek a pathway that's going to give you sustainability and stability. Okay. Yes, you may have to do a pizza run here or there. You may be driving Uber, whatever the case may be, but settle in and take stock. We talked about this in our past segments where we said, are you taking stock of your skills and your abilities to do things? What are they? What's your strength, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats? What are the things that are going to make change for you should you put some energy into it? And that leads to networking opportunities. Engaging in this area, it helps you to promote, and it helps you to also find the establishment of these professional networks. There's a lot of unions out there. And one of them, I was speaking to a guy who was in the electrician union. Yes, because he was doing the HVAC at one of the buildings I was managing. And he said to me, he said, Jay, he goes, this is such a, it's so blatant, but so under accessed by people because they think that it's just grunt work. When he showed me the HVAC system, I swear he was talking a whole different language. But what he did really show me was that we don't talk about the security that came with it. Like he got in, he was part of the union, and he was making sometimes up to $150, $160 per hour for some of the jobs that he was doing. And this was employment, okay? And he eventually tapered off to doing his own business. He opened his own HVAC business, and he's doing the things that he loves to do, but he's making really good money. So he jumped from like $150, $160 to almost $400 an hour based on what he was charging for whatever needed to be fixed. He got this because he said, I was talking to family and friends about this, and someone connected him, right? Networked him to someone in the union, and he did his apprenticeship, and he got in just based on that connection, right? That person had some, I guess, inside what's that word? Insights. He had insights in it, and he knew how to guide him, navigate this component. And so he got in, and now he's making hand over foot. And he sponsored a lot of my community events. And in turn, I would expose the youth or the kids to these types of positions. And I was so happy to see that many of them who wanted to drop out of school stayed in school, even to just get their diploma so that they can go into a skilled trade. And so if we can start to change the way we look at skilled trades, we would get to see that it's probably one of the most viable, just as much as being a doctor, in a sense, the kind of opportunities you can get from that. The last major benefit of exploring the landscape of employment is the societal impact. Now, when you're pursuing a career in these fields, this can improve the representation and drive systemic change. Are we here for the same reason? For community conversation, yes, we are looking to change. And that's the key word that I will continue to mention each and every week. We talk about it, we complain about it, we go to our counselors with it, we call each other with it. Girl, did you see what's on you? Girl, these people are blah, 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 blah. But are you actually part of the change? I want to ask you that again. Are you part of the change? Are you creating systemic oppression by simply not changing or not exploring or not accessing the resources that are clearly out there? And in this day and age, let's be real about it, we can't access it. We can't blame everything on systems. We can be honestly creating our own oppressions within ourselves, hindering ourselves from progress that is going to help us to get to where we want to go in life. The societal impact that you can make or your children will make for their children or for legacies thereafter is what you want to invest in. And by doing that, you're not only just exploring the employment landscape, but you're changing the way people access the employment. Okay. I have been privileged enough to work with a group of people who are visionaries and they want to become CEOs. And that's my specialty. I help people to strengthen their wings to fly. And it's important for me to do that because I understand that these markets are out there and they're for the taking. And there's no bias. There's no bias. If you have a great product or a service and you put it out there, you have the potential to be selling millions. And by doing that, you now are helping to inform the landscape. You become the system. And now you can make those changes and employ people who have the skill sets to help you advance your vision, and scale it to mass amounts. There's no secret formula to this, people. I'm going to say this again. There's no secret formula to this. This is really based on what you're trying to achieve. Okay. We wanted to take a minute here. I'm always dropping facts and figures. Now I'm going to drop gems. The things that I'm telling you are basic around 4 things. DRIP, your drive, your resilience, your innovation, and your progression. That's what I call it. Level up your DRIP. And I say that continuously because once you keep unlocking components of your mind and opening your mind to change and challenging your belief systems and challenging your emotional intelligence, you will get to see there is a big landscape behind that door in your mind. The one that you open up and start to see that you not only have the capability to learn, but you have the capacity to make change. And that's important. And it's important that you recognize it. And if you can recognize it, then you can role model it. And if you can role model it, then you can teach it. And if you can teach it, then you have help others to not only stretch their exploration abilities, but also their exploration capacity. How often do you sit down and take into account what your contribution to the toxic systems we live in are? Just gonna ask this one more time. Where you live, look around. If you're happy with it, amazing. If you're not, ask, how am I contributing to it? How much learning do I do on a weekly basis? How much reading do I do? Had a conversation this morning in my coaching session, my sales development coaching session. And one of the things that we talked about was knowing, when to shut up. Yeah. Because your child may have an interest that you don't have the knowledge on, and you may take it and turn it into that's a distraction and come and get focused in the direction that you are aware of and that you have the knowledge for. And that can be a huge, huge hindrance for progress. You kill a person's drive. right? You kill them, you demotivate it by trying to move them into your interest versus letting them, instead of manifesting and nurturing their interest. I don't care. My kid could have the most interest in something. And let me tell you something. If I am bored till the tears in my eyes start to form a pattern on my face, I'm going to sit there and continue to be bored out of my mind because my child is excited about it. And if that means I have to learn some of the language so that I can have an intelligent conversation with him, that's what I'm going to do. My kid, my younger, he hits me with it sometimes. He'll be talking to me about some kind of mathematical something or the other. And I'm like, bruh, yo, if it ain't money, honey, I'm not trying to do these numbers. But when I take a little time to hear him and listen to him, and then I try to get a little jargon under my belt so I can have a conversation with him, it's amazing. It's amazing the knowledge that he has on these things that I might not be personally interested in, but he was born with that gift. And so it's our responsibility to nurture that gift. And you've been given a gift, but you've also been given and handed down belief systems from your experiences or from the people that nurtured you very early years, right? You might only know about going into the to sports industry or the music industry or the hair industry or the nursing industry, right? You may only know from what you see in your community. But if you take a moment to kind of sit down and say, why was I not exposed? Most of the times it's just out of knowledge, right? Most of the times it's just out of knowledge. Your parents didn't. Like they did what their parents did, vice versa, right? So you have to take a minute and say to yourself, let me take a stock of what's out here today and how do I prepare myself and my family? May not just be directly your children, but your siblings, the people that you have impact on. Stop and take a minute. All the young people in my life, I talk about finance. Financial literacy is a must for if you're in my world. If you're a godchild, if you're my basketball child, if you're my blood child, I'm very, 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 very insistent on them learning financial literacy. Why? Because at the end of the day, the dollars and the cents matter. And for them to get to their dreams, they're going to have, some of them, they need to have a lot of dollars and cents, right? So it's important for us to do that. And when by doing that, I've helped them to really recognize that there's a world bigger and beyond. So if you have a thought, don't squelch it because your parents might say no. It's about educating your parents sometimes, educating each other, and showing them that, hey, there's a field here. And I'm happy tinkering around on a computer and because really and truthfully, I'm coding. I'm making something that when you watch TV or cartoon or whatever the case is, if you look at what goes into these, I was reading about Pixar, and I looked at Toy Story a whole lot differently. Finding Nemo? Who needs to find Nemo? With all the technology they had in that. Even the Avatar movie, $400 million movie it took to make this movie. Because if you look at the credits, you will see all the industry things that people don't hear about. You see the actors, you see all the lights, you see the action, the things are blowing up, but there's people behind that in skilled trades. There's people behind that with high-level academia who can take something like a thought like this and turn it into a whole movie. Am I making sense here? If I'm making sense, drop something in the chat, because let me tell you right here, each week I'm going to be talking about things that impact change, and it's you. I'm talking to you. I want to talk with you. I want to tell you things because you are equivalent to the change that we're making in these communities. I am always astounded to see more and more and more representation happening. I'm astounded to see the rooms that are filling up with representation, but you must understand something. Representation happens because you're accessing the knowledge, the skill, and capacity that the world has to offer. So don't get hung up on yourself. Get hung up on continuous drip. I'm going to circle back to that now. So we talked about drive. Drive is really pushed from understanding that you don't have to stop. There's no barrier and no challenge in this world that tells you to stop. It's you. It's the mental capacity. It's the mindset. It's the self-talk. Oh, I can't do that. It's too hard. I have to study too long. I have so many things to do. When you are trying to make something better in your life, you need to discard all of that nonsense. You need to start telling yourself, I have to make the time to sit down and study, even if it's 30 minutes a day on a skill that I'm interested in or I want to develop. When you're driven to continue looking for these pieces of learning and wisdom and knowledge, you will start to see that you're able to apply to a lot more. Your exploration becomes a lot easier. In fact, you start to have a multitude of choices, which leads us to resilience. Now, I always say there's a cycle that I've built on this. There's the negative drip cycle, and then there's the positive drip cycle. In the negative drip cycle, you're looking at demotivation. Demotivation happens when you're looking for this job, you can't find it, you get frustrated, you get annoyed, you're fed up, you're tired of living hand to mouth, and I'm done. Which leads to resistance. Resistance to change, resistance to learning, resistance to knowledge, resistance to guidance, right? You adopt this attitude, I can do bad all by myself. I just need time. I'm going to go get it all figured out. And then I'm going to come back and I'm going to find an amazing job and everything is going to be good. But you get resistance to someone telling you that you might need to upgrade your course, your skill sets by taking a course or a certification, or you're going to need to go and look at this license and get this done. This resistance leads to isolation. Too much times people close their mouths and they don't say what their needs are, and they suffer in silence, which leads to things like mental health, physical health, stress, anxiety, and and a lot of other negative things that make life just not great to live, right? So we need to be careful we don't get into a form of isolation by just not sharing, this is the knowledge, skill, or capacity I need in order to be gainfully employed, which leads to pity. Okay, pity. That's when hashtag the struggle is real. Hashtag, I'm trying to survive, and every interaction, every thought from the moment you get up is super negative, and you put 10 toes down, you put it back on the bed, and you lay in the isolation. You stop talking to family and friends. And so that negative cycle, the motivation, resistance, isolation, and pity becomes a negative drip cycle. What I'm moving you to, and I want to open your mind to, is the positive drip cycle. So we move from the motivation to drive, which we just spoke about. Get hungry. There is nothing in this world that stops you from learning. If you can access a library, a computer, a laptop, a cell phone, some data, you have access to the biggest library in the world. It's called the internet, and there's nothing that you can't learn off of it. Then that takes us to when you're driven and you're out there and you're giving yourself the inspiration, aspiration to be better, that leads to resilience. Are you going to get knocked down? Of course. Are you going to make every job interview a permanent thing? Maybe not. You may have to go through a few job interviews to find what suits your role, find what suits your skill sets. But that resilience comes from knowing that you're on a mission to find the right thing. You're on a mission to find the place that suits you, that gives you the ability to be better, that's going to give you the ability to take care of your family the way you want to fly where you want to go, to vacate where you want to be, to drive the car you want to drive, knowing that you just have to keep putting one step in front of the other. Small steps lead to big change. And once you get into that rhythm of resilience, that, hey, nothing puts me down, it just gets me stronger, I spread my wings and I fly. Which leads to innovation. When we become resilient, we become really good at figuring out how to get what we want. We get really good at figuring out how to streamline and create efficiencies and effectiveness so that we can continue finding our niche and finding our spot in this world. And so by having that level of innovation, it comes from what? It comes from reading, it comes from meditation, it comes from constantly reviewing what are your strengths and how could you use that to make yourself a more viable competitor in a very competitive employment environment. All right. So innovation also stems from a lot of listening to things and reading things. Start to replace some of those behaviors. Netflix and chill. How about Netflix and build up your knowledge? How about that instead, right? Find a documentary. Go on there. They're there. They're there. You can go online, check YouTube, anywhere. You can find the things that you're interested in. Just get to know more about it. No one's saying you have to be diehard, dedicated to it, but it doesn't hurt for you to just look something up and listen to it, right? So do that. Okay, and that innovation is going to give you ways that, hey, I can take underemployment to gainful employment. I can take unemployment to being employed. All right, which leads to the last P, progression. My push for everyone is always small steps lead to big change, and progression happens little by little. You have to remind yourself that for some of the habits you've gained over time, it's based on a long period. Okay, so if you're a procrastinator, that didn't happen overnight. You've probably been doing it for years. But in order for you to progress to where you want to be, someone who's on top of it and getting things done, then you want to start looking at taking those small steps. So let's say you're in a job right now. You're in a job for 10 years and you've been doing the damn thing day in and day out. 20 years comes, you're doing the thing day in and day out. You start to kind of feel the sedentary set in. You start to feel, okay, I'm not advancing as much as possible, or maybe I stopped taking on projects and initiatives at work. It's time for a quick time check, right? In order to get to the next step or promotion or job, you need to start really looking at what are those steps I need to take. Do I need to get factored into something that's going to teach me or upgrade my skill sets? Am I looking at what my company is moving, shifting towards, right? So we use AI all the time. Is my company shifting towards AI? How can I be more knowledgeable and skillful in this, that I can be of value to the company that I work for? These are just small pieces of change and progression that happen that make it easier for you to start thinking that you are exploring the landscape from a different lens. So you heard my philosophy of the drip cycle. We go from the negative drip, so we turn the motivation into drive, we turn resistance into resilience, we turn isolation into innovation, and we turn pity into progression. Now, if you can catch that simple philosophy and apply it to your day-to-day lives, you'll not only have the ability to explore employment landscapes, but you'll have the ability to explore everything in your life and make the necessary changes to be where you want to be. And for me, that's in the sky. I want to say thank you for being here for the hour. I hope you learned something today. And if you didn't, well, watch it again. All right. But we definitely are looking at continuously providing you information. Love Bay and I are aligned in that objective, that we are here not just to make things happen, but to make impactful change. Okay. No matter where you are in the world, this is all applicable. Use the resources that you have, because at the end of the day, it's the only way. Thank you for being here with me on Community Conversations with your host, Miss J, the founder and CEO of Boss Women Society and Empire by Design. We are always looking to take over the skies. So get your head there, spread your wings, and let's fly. We'll see you next week on Community Conversations with more what's hot, what's not, and what you got. Feel free to connect with me at infolovebay@gmail.com and follow me at Boss Women Society or the World of Miss J, whichever one works for you. I intend to continue building the need to make change. Have a good one and keep the conversation going.